We hope many of you will join us in June for ChemCon Asia 2026 in Singapore. Against a backdrop of growing geopolitical tension and rapidly evolving regulatory frameworks worldwide, the role of regulatory teams in industry is becoming increasingly complex. I'm therefore very pleased to be joined in this ChemConnection video by Paul Ylioja from Merck. Paul, how are these geopolitical developments reshaping the priorities, workloads and risk management approaches of regulatory teams in global companies?
There certainly is a lot happening. Companies are having to consider again how resilient their supply chains are to further shocks and uncertainty. Cost of energy and materials are pushing up the cost of production and putting everyone under strain. Managing these changes is already a huge challenge, and it's much harder when the regulatory frameworks are changing at the same time. Thankfully, we're seeing political leaders recognize that simpler approaches to chemical regulations, like the omnibus proposals in the EU, can often achieve the same effects in risk management while reducing some of the burdens on industry. But unfortunately, they're finding that it's not so easy to make these simplifications quickly enough to allow industry to flourish and to allow both critical supply chains to function and to better innovate. We're seeing this trend globally, in the US, the EU and in Asia. Although regions are seeing more competition and political tension, the reality is that trade will need to continue and companies will continue to operate globally.
The trade show must go on. More on supply chain disruption in our Monday morning seminar on value chain values, visions and vulnerabilities. And the key regulatory developments like EU's Chemical Industry Action Plan are in our main program. Paul, would you have any recommendations for how authorities and industry can improve and cope with all these changes and challenges?
We need regulatory frameworks to be compatible with each other. There will be differences because these different regions have different needs when it comes to risk management. But recognizing data, registrations and evaluations from different regions will help. Each region will learn what works and what doesn't, and those willing to make it easier to introduce new chemicals, new technologies will likely benefit the most. Data on chemicals for hazard communication, composition, sustainability and regulatory status and traceability are becoming much more available in digital formats. The EU and ECHA has been leading this for a long time, but now others are picking up. In China, we're seeing the implementation of traceability codes and QR codes and digital product passports for some products under the ESPR in the EU. These systems can help, but they will throw up new issues from substance identifier and GHS and dangerous goods classification inconsistencies, and how to manage CBI, confidential business information, versus material compositions, and what to do with unknown content, trace impurities and so on. If these are not addressed well, it often brings additional paperwork, signed statements and so on. And these easy little steps can really add up when you consider all the imports and transactions that are taking place. A lot of bureaucracy will happen. So it usually helps to really focus on the minimum viable product. Ask what requirements are nice to have and which really reduce the risk to health and environment. Anticipate what your customers need for their compliance and their assessments and focus on that.
There's a lot of nice to know and need to know in our Singapore program. Our session on EU sustainability strategies and initiatives captures both. Digital and AI related topics can be found throughout the program. Digital and AI tools promise a lot. Paul, how much can they help and how much is just a hype?
There's no question about it. Digital systems and processes are the future. AI can be used to provide new insights or enable assessments that were seen as too complex in the past, like life cycle assessments. Better digital systems for chemical regulatory authorities can help, but this also needs investment and skills, and especially if we're talking about use of next generation risk assessment methods or NAMs. These systems also allow companies to transfer information with greater accuracy, but any mistakes that exist can multiply. Digital systems and AI bring a lot more power to process information much faster, and this means we can identify regulatory needs much more quickly, both by industry and by authorities, but these systems themselves won't solve the issue of what to do with new information. We already have more data than we have had in the past, so let's make better use of what we have. We need to make decisions much more quickly, with the right level of precaution and risk. The hype is that AI will solve all these problems, but unless we're prepared to be led by AI, someone will still need to take clear decisions.
That really is a lot. How can you make sense of it all, and how can companies navigate changes and take decisions to maintain their compliance?
Planning early is the key. And regulatory teams usually know what is coming in terms of future regulatory requirements. These proposed new requirements might be delayed, but usually they will come eventually. The scientific reality around climate change and sustainability are not going to go away, so we need safer, more sustainable products. The challenge is how to gain both a license to operate for your new products, advanced materials, and maintain the compliance of existing portfolio while being challenged by cost and resources. The first thing to go is usually communication, planning, and horizon scanning. In the short term, this is a necessity, but if it goes on, it gets harder and harder to recover. And I feel this applies as much to authorities as industry. Companies can help by being more efficient and effective, by organizing your internal regulatory processes better, and making sure that your business partners are with you in all of your product stewardship and regulatory activities. But ultimately, there is no substitute for meeting together and really working to understand how to best manage chemicals in a way that enables innovation while improving safety and sustainability. So talk whenever possible with all your stakeholders, even if it's difficult.
Thank you, Paul. For already 3 decades, ChemCon Conferences has provided a platform for stakeholders across the chemical industry value chain to meet, exchange insights and share experiences on regulations and sustainability. We look forward to welcoming Merck, industry peers and many regulators this June in Singapore.